chair of the committee is from Ward 5, Councillor Bill Humphrey. From Ward 1, Councillor John Oliver. Councillor at Large from Ward 2, Councillor David Mickley. From Ward 3, Councillor Julia Malachy. Councillor Malachy, you spent a lot of time with us last session, and I think we just grew on you. And you said,
did you just say David is at large?
I'm sorry?
Did you just say David Mickley is at large?
No, I did not.
Oh, I thought I must have heard wrong. Sorry.
Definitely not.
No, if I said that, I am in error, but we are joined by, from Ward 7, Councillor Lyle Baker, the Dean of the Committee. And from Ward 8, Councillor Stephen Farrell is here. I believe that shortly we will be joined by Alan Lobovitz from Ward 6. When he joins, I will mention that. We are also joined by the Chief Operating Officer of the city, Jonathan Yeo. Good evening, Mr. Yeo. And clerk of our committee is Jacqueline Norton. Good evening, Jacqueline, and thank you for being here. First item on our agenda is item 58-24. This is a discussion concerning Programs and Services Committee work plan for the new term. This discussion item is really just an opportunity for everyone to say, you know, something they're hoping either the committee will take up, they're hoping to get out of the committee, they are hoping that we will address. Really a free-for-all to say, you know, why did you want to be on Programs and Services? Or did you just default here? Introduce yourself to the fellow members of the committee, and again, tell us, you know, maybe something that you're open to do on the committee. I will tell you that 4 of the topics I potentially foresee us taking up this session. The tree ordinance. I know that there's interest in potentially already revisiting the tree ordinance or making it a more perfect ordinance. Like our union, I think we can never get it perfect, but a more perfect ordinance. Leaf blowers, we can't ever be done with that. So maybe we'll make that a more perfect ordinance as well. I know that we're going to talk about recycling, or at least plastic bottles probably. And I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to talk about turf and or PFAS, including the resolution we have before us tonight. So I'm happy to go around to everyone, but I'm also happy to start with someone like Councillor Baker, who has his hand up. Members of the committee, you should also know that it is incumbent upon Councillor Baker to start with a process question for everything that we do. So I am very hopeful that I will not be let down here. Councillor Baker.
I hate to disappoint you. I just have an item that I hope we'll discuss. Gasp. I know. Never mind.
The process is clear? I don't believe it. Okay.
I think in addition to the items you've talked about, I think the upcoming election cycle is worth spending a little time to try and make sure we have the resources available to take care of the sort of change in voting patterns we're seeing in the city. So a conversation with our city clerk might be in order, because we're the committee that worries about those sorts of things.
Absolutely, and thank you for bringing that up, Councillor Baker. I will say on that point, I know we have early voting hours before us tonight, and folks on the committee. I think, if I'm not mistaken, 5 of us are new. So if I jump right into things, feel free to stop me. But one of the things we do on this committee is we talk about elections and the election process in the city. We set dates when need be. We handle a lot of the election matters. I think we're actually going to have an opportunity. There's going to be a docket item, if there isn't already, to talk about potentially whether we as a city want to move our elections to the even years to coincide with state elections. So there will certainly be an opportunity to really go deep in terms of policy around our elections.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Let me just, Councillor Humphrey, was there anything you wanted to say as Vice Chair? Let me give you a little opportunity to talk about things you want to talk about.
I was planning to wait and see if anyone else had stuff, but I'll get people's creative juices going here. I would love for us to reconvene the rules subcommittee. I think there was some unfinished work from the term before the most recent term, and we never did come back to it. So we had taken care of a few kind of really cosmetic things, but anything sort of substantive, I know there's still public interest in some of that, maybe cleaning up how we conduct some of our full-length meetings of the whole council.
Yeah, Councilor Humphrey, not to interrupt you, but I believe the president has already sort of started to poll the councilors about the time for beginning our full city council meetings. That is in the rules right now, so that would certainly be ripe for a discussion around amending the rules.
I know former Councilor Noel had asked me to redocket an item on ethics and so forth, so that'll be, coming down the pipeline. And we had started that discussion at the end of the last term with the previous composition of this committee. And I think at some point we might want to think about looking into the noise ordinance more broadly than just the leaf blowers for things that maybe need to get updated on that front. I know there's been a few specific incidents where it has been suggested by some members of the public that maybe the noise ordinance isn't necessarily consistent with how some of our neighboring peer communities do things. Obviously, we're not comparing directly to like Boston, but that there could be some changes there to be sort of more in line with similar communities. And additionally, something that I've been kicking around now for several years and haven't really gotten to filing is, and this is again, noise ordinance. There's an increasing issue in the city of people putting up rabbit deterrent noisemakers that are only audible to people under a certain age who can hear those frequencies still. And I'll tell you, it's very startling, speaking as the youngest member of the city council, if you're out for a walk and one of those goes off with a motion sensor, it's very surprising and painful. And I don't honestly think that people are doing it intentionally. I think they're installing them because they're frustrated about rabbits eating their stuff in their yard, but don't realize how actually loud the thing is when it goes off. And I've seen that it bothers pets a lot, like dogs and stuff out for a walk. This is actually a much bigger problem in the United Kingdom, where people were deliberately installing these to disperse teens, and they would put them outside of storefronts, not realizing that there are young people that work in the stores all day that have to hear them, and then young people who live in the apartments above the stores. And so there was this sort of crisis around those. And fortunately, we haven't had that situation, but I know it's not like a super high priority for probably most residents in the city, but it is pretty frustrating, I think, for some of the younger residents. And by younger, I'm including like under the age of probably 35 here. So that's a pretty large section of people. Anyway.
Sounds terrible.
Yeah.
This is not something I'm aware of, but
yeah,
it sounds terrible.
It's not like an enormous thing, but there's got to be something we can do about that. And I just figured it would be good to take it up at some point in this committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Humphrey. On the bright side, if you wait long enough to file that docket item, it will take care of itself for you. So, Councilor Malachy, and welcome to your official inaugural meeting as a member of the committee.
Thank you. Now, if I'm double zooming, this one will be the priority one, and well, it all depends on what's up.
We don't tolerate double zooming here. We want people focused and locked in on programs and services.
Mr. Chair, you hit the topics I would have said, namely trees and turf. Happy to revisit leaf blowers too, although that seemed to have kind of settled down into some sort of equilibrium. Councilor Humphrey's comments about the noise ordinance, I'm fascinated to learn about the rabbit device. I guess I must be over the age and hear it, because it hasn't bothered me out walking. But I would, kind of along those lines, I know we just passed the vibration ordinance that seemed to have been targeted toward preventing damage to structures from long vibration. But I think a similar another problem with that is when you have basically jackhammers or analogous tools going hours on end, day after day, which was a situation up on West Newton Hill a year or two ago. And it seems like it's not loud enough to trigger the 70 decibel threshold to be in violation, but the duration and the kind of the constancy of it is a real detriment to quality of life in a way that sort of more general construction noise, rumbles and irregular noises don't seem to be. So I'd like to try to find a way to address that, perhaps with, our like duration limits or something like that for what I'd call repetitive noises.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it, Councilor Malachy. Councilor Oliver.
Hello, sir. So, speaking as not anywhere near close to the youngest member on City Council, I'm really interested. I was wondering what that noise was down here on Albee when I walked past with my dog. There's a guy down here towards the end who has a sensor that I think Councilor Humphrey's talking about, but I think he has it set up for geese. So it scares off the geese because otherwise they're on his lawn, doing what geese do on grass all day long. So I'm interested in that one. That one's kind of, I don't know, it's bringing a grin to my face, but there you have it.
But just to be clear, you're interested in it as it pertains to geese, not as it pertains to rabbits. So
correct. Don't care about the rabbits.
Just
geese and perhaps ducks, maybe ducks, but no.
Okay.
No, it's interesting. I had no idea it was for rabbits, but it does. Yeah, it does annoy the out of my dog. That's for sure. On a serious note, though, there is.
I apologize, Councilor Oliver. I was remiss. Councilor Lobovitz has joined us. Councilor Lobovitz, thank you for being with us. I introduced you earlier as a member of the committee. I know that you were at City Hall, not realizing we were meeting remotely. So thank you for joining us. And it's Lobovitz, right? Am I pronouncing that right?
Lobovitz.
Okay. I'll get it right by the third meeting. I apologize for interrupting you, Councilor Oliver. Please go ahead.
Third or fourth meeting. That's fine.
Third. That's my goal.
Okay. All right. There you go. And by the way, Alan, you're looking very dapper. I think Mr. Yo was 100% correct. You were ready to rock and roll in person. But on a serious note, I do think that one of the things that has been front and center for Newton for a long time, and perhaps even more so over the past several weeks and months, is the relationship between the City Council and the school committee. And I noticed that that's front and center in our committee's responsibilities. I would love to be able to docket an item to really explore how we can, really kind of work together in a more organized fashion, a more methodical, planned out, and intentional, I think might be a good word there to use. I've got a few other things that pertain to Parks and Rec, one of which is more of a finance item that I have to bring up with Councilors Albright and Grossman, which is revolving accounts, but it has to do with finance as well as Parks and Rec. So those are really the only two, different topics or threads that came to mind for me. But thanks for the opportunity to throw them out there.
No, that's great. Thank you, Councilor Oliver. Appreciate it. I know that we have our joint meeting with the school committee coming up, maybe even next week.
That's pretty soon, yeah. Yeah.
And you're right, because what happens is we have that meeting. I forget if it's once a year, what it is. And every time we do it, everyone's like, this is great. We should do this more often. This is really fantastic. And then the next time we do it, everyone says, this is great. We should do this more often, So
right. And I think coming into the budget season this perhaps here, I'm not quite sure why. Perhaps that might be more critical this time around, but it seems to me that it might be.
Yeah, I feel like the school, they're not busy right now, so they've got time.
No.
Counselor Migley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excited to be here, excited for this group. So yeah, a few things that I'm looking forward to discussing in this committee. The first is building off what Councilor Oliver was saying, our work with Newton Public Schools, especially around curriculum, which I think will be a big focus for the coming years with the new superintendent. We have a docket item to discuss on that tonight, and just excited to engage in some of those items here. Second is our partnership with the Newton Housing Authority. There's a few properties in Ward 2 that the Newton Housing Authority owns and manages, and would love to just understand better how we can support that from a city perspective. I know they receive funding from us, from the state, and from the federal level, and I just think they do great work in providing truly affordable housing that's based on people's income. So if people make nothing, they basically pay nothing, and it's basically the last vestige of public housing that we really have in Newton. And yeah, we'd just be excited to see how we can be a good partner to them. The third thing is just to get a better sense of what the Programs and Services Committee actually covers. What falls into our bucket versus what doesn't. Just trying to understand what sort of is our scope and range of responsibilities. And finally, just looking around at who's in this committee, I'm really excited about this group. We have some diverse perspectives, and yeah, I'm just excited to work with all of you and get to know each other better through the work.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councilor Migley. Appreciate it. Councilor Farrell. You're still on mute. I don't know if you're trying to unmute.
Is that any better?
Yep, perfect.
Oh, thank you then, Mr. Chair. I appreciate this opportunity. I too am excited about working with Parks and Recreation. Well, that you will see, but with Programs and Services over the coming year. And with respect to Parks and Recreation, I've had an intimate and long relationship with Parks and Recreation. My backyard abuts the playing fields at Newton South High School. And through that and other interactions, I've become very interested in just trying to understand better what a full and comprehensive plan that Parks and Recreation might have, rather than, in my opinion, a list of just a few projects as I look at it. I believe Parks and Recreation is one of the services in the city that is affects almost as many people as the school department. It is a huge benefit to people in the city, and I would just like to understand better how they're planning to move forward over the coming years. There are also many other issues that have been identified by other people that I'm very interested in too, but thank you. I think it will be very exciting to be here on this committee.
Well, thank you. We are glad to have you as part of this committee. I will say that we spend a lot of time with Commissioner Banks. At least we have the past couple of years. So I think if for those of you who are interested in Parks, Rec, and Culture, you've come to the right place.
Good.
Okay. I will say that the calendar, the schedule, as folks know, I think we meet the first and third Wednesday, or the Wednesdays after the first and third Mondays, I think it is technically, each month. In February, thank you all for your indulgence. I'm going to be out of town on Wednesday, February 7th, so I think at least a majority of the committee was available on Thursday, February 8th. So we have tentatively rescheduled that one. So for those of you like Councilor Malachy who take a great interest in other committees, February 7th, go for it, be great.
Great.
That one's for you. That's on, I think it's page 3 of the agenda, so you can look at those dates if you need them or you want to program them in for anything. Does anyone have anything else to say regarding this item or the work of the committee? Councilor Labovitz. How did I do that time?
Sorry about being a bit late. I'm also excited about being on the committee and look forward to working with everybody. I am also interested in learning more about the purview of the committee, as Councilor Mickley mentioned. For those of us who are newer, I think that would be helpful. I'm just thinking maybe at each meeting, we could just take a few minutes to review each area. That's up to the chairman as to how that could be done. We could have a separate meeting for those of us who are newer to learn more about the purview of the committee. I was wondering
It's
whether
broad. I will say the purview of the committee is quite broad. There are a number of areas, a
right,
number of
that's why I think
departments.
it's important for us to
Yeah.
be educated a little bit more about it. I was wondering if the committee oversees dog issues, dog parks, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Because a constituent of mine was asking about an area in the city where many people bring their dogs, but apparently, and nobody's bothered by it. You know, he's looking to get some guidance as to whether a dog park could be created. It's not near any other dog park. And so anyway, it's something I'd like to explore a little bit more. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I was gonna ask, did you want to hold this item to give us
Off-leash
flexibility?
dogs are under the purview of this committee under Parks, Rec, and Culture. I'm sorry, say that again.
Sorry,
Is my connection bad, or you guys? Am I going in and out?
I would go ahead.
I think my connection's bad. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got you. I think you faded out for a minute there.
Okay. I just wanted to say, Councilor Lovovitz, that definitely under the purview of this committee. Parks, Rec, and Culture is mostly responsible for that. There is an off-leash dog, I think it's a work group. That's sort of the first stop for creating new off-leash dog parks, which it sounds like you may be interested in. So, you know, maybe offline I can get you that information, or someone can get you that information, because that's usually the first step for creating an off-leash dog park, after this body created an ordinance that set up that process. So
thank you.
Definitely under the purview.
Thank you.
Mr.
And
Chair.
I just wanted to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking.
Councilor Humphrey, yeah.
I had a vague recollection that one of the other unfinished items from the term before, not the most recent one, but the one before that, was that we had started work on some ordinance change related to the off-leash dogs, but then we had maybe only passed or dealt with one of the parens, and then I don't think we ever came back to the other one. So I don't remember what it was, but we should check into that and see, because that would have been about 2 years ago now. And I feel like we maybe dropped the ball on that one by accident.
I have a vague recollection of what you're talking about. I don't think we dropped the ball. I think the group didn't want to move forward with a recommendation, but it's worth revisiting the ordinance and looking at
that
how
could have been the
working.
case.
So,
it could have also been that the working group needed to do more work and then just never got back to us with their recommendations or something. But I just wanted to make sure that if there was something that had been left hanging, that we at least knew what the outcome was there.
Yeah, like you said, I think it's worth revisiting the ordinance and seeing, you know, how it's working. Is it working well? And are there changes we need to make?
Yeah.
Councilor Oliver, was there something you wanted to say as well? No, you're good. Okay. Councilor Mickley.
Yeah, just on that note, tonight there's a group meeting on that topic, Cabot Canines, and they're having just a public meeting to get feedback on the idea of having off-leash hours or just off-leash park completely at Cabot Woods at Edmonds Park. So that's a volunteer group of residents, but yeah, we might be hearing from them in some capacity or another based on the input of the meeting and the survey that they're collecting.
Okay, that's great. Councilor Mickley, you may, if you want to look into the off-leash dog working group and provide that information to those residents. Probably be helpful to them.
Sounds good.
So,
Okay,
Mr.
I
Chair,
don't
did you
think we
want to?
need to hold it. I think we can, no action
Okay.
necessary.
I didn't know
But-
if we needed to keep it alive just in case we needed to come back later in the term and have a work plan discussion or something.
I think just sort of like a rabbit that's causing a nuisance, we can just kill it.
I would, you may need it, Mr. Chairman. We've held on to it in ZAP, but you can bring it up if you need it.
Yeah, I mean, I can always file a new one. So why don't we go no action necessary? And if we need it,
All
we'll.
right, I'll move no action necessary. Did you cover the in-person versus not in-person thing that you wanted to bring up earlier?
No, that's a good point. This committee has been meeting remotely. I don't know, Jacqueline, 2.5 years, longer than that. I think we started during COVID and never came in.
To my knowledge, that's the case.
Are folks interested in, do folks prefer to meet remotely? Would folks prefer to meet in person, or a combination, 1-on-1 every month?
I prefer in person myself, but
I'd like in person, especially now that I'm retired from my Lowell Sun job and have a lot more time in the evenings.
Okay,
But
that's
I
two for in person.
I would be a third voice in favor of in person also.
I'd be a fourth. No,
I'd
John,
be
you're
a fifth.
I'd be a 6, not in favor of in person. I like remote. So I guess a first in favor of remote. I mean, I'm not against in person, but the hybrid I think is important.
Well, yeah, I think it should be hybrid for the public too.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be a hybrid. There's no question about that. But if folks want to try and get together in person, okay. Okay. I mean, I think that's at least like five or six who are more interested in person. So, Jacqueline, why don't we at least start doing one each month in person? We'll go from there, and if it's working well and if people are liking it better, we'll do it. All right. So
Sounds good.
before the next meeting, we'll let folks know. I think February 8th is actually tough for me because I'm coming back into town. So I'd rather start at the second one in February if that's okay with folks. Not that Thursday meeting. Okay. All right, Jacqueline, let's make a note of that, okay? Okay. Councillor Humphrey has moved no action necessary on 5824. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Councilor Baker, are you opposed to no action necessary? Are you okay with this?
I'm with you. I'll go with it.
All right, any abstentions? All right, I believe that is 8-0. The next item is item 75-24. This is a request to set early voting hours for the March 5th primary election. I believe we are joined by Mr. Doyle from the clerk's office. Mr. Doyle, you want to talk to us about our early voting hours and the recommendation?
I would love to. I'd love to. Jacqueline, can I share? Do I have screen sharing abilities at the moment?
I have just enabled that.
Thank you very much. All right, so let me just get this rocking and rolling. All right, so thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. So the state, so for the local elections, the city council, the election commission recommends the early voting hours, and then the city council, votes on it and decides them as well based on the recommendation from the commission. This is a little bit different because the state does, for state and federal elections, they give us sets, kind of a framework to work within. So it's between Saturday, the 24th of February to March 1st. That's when, they have to be done. And we have to have at least office hours and then 6 hours each weekend day. The election commission voted 4-0 to keep them as you see here, except on Wednesday, the 28th, they added a day to 8 p.m. So just extending it one day to make it some evening hours to allow people who work maybe in the office 9 to 5 a chance to do it during the weekday. So without further ado, it's going to be, well, the recommendation from the committee in conjunction with what the state kind of gives to us and sets it for us is Saturday the 24th and Sunday the 25th, both days 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday the 26th, Tuesday the 27th, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's our office hours. Wednesday the 28th, like I said, 8:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's the evening hour day. Thursday the 29th, 8:30 to 5 p.m. And then Friday the 1st, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Kind of just as I always like to give a little bit of data whenever I do these presentations. So just we believe that those are sufficient hours based on the data. So, going back to September 2022, I pulled all early voting in-person data as far as the percentage of which it is used as a method to vote. So the three methods are early in-person, this vote by mail, and then same day voting. So September 2022, it was 5.1%. November 2022, that went up to 7.6. March of 23 down to 5.5. September of 2023 up to 6.9. And most recently, with the election a few months ago, it was 6%. So we feel that it's not a very high percentage, and we feel that the hours, and the election commission agreed and recommended that the hours there should meet the needs of the percentage of people that vote. So,
thank you, Mr. Doyle. Let me just two things to make sure members of the committee are aware. One, this is the presidential primary that we're talking about.
Yep, March 5th primary. Apologies.
Okay,
yep.
So the presidential primary takes place on March 5th, and state law requires early voting for all state elections. And number two, it has been the custom and the tradition, I would say, of the city and certainly this committee to extend and have later hours at least one day during the week, and to try to have some weekend hours as well. And that way we feel that we hit sort of all the demographics, all the different areas of people who may be interested in voting early. And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Doyle, this all takes place at City Hall, correct?
Correct. Yep, this is all at City Hall.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. Are there questions from members of the committee? Mr. Councilor Farrell?
Thank you. Mr. Doyle, these are percentages of what? What's the number the city uses?
So total
registered voters.
Not registered. So I'm getting those numbers based off how many people voted in that election. So I think this is off the top of my head, but in November 2022, we had something like 36,800 voters. So, and I also we keep data and we track how many people go early in person. So I just figure out the percentage with those based on those two numbers.
So it's basically a percentage of the people who actually vote.
Yes, it's not a percentage of registered voters. It's a percentage based on the number of voters in that said election.
And if I may, just one more quick question. Is there any opportunity, particularly on weekends, to do these in the neighborhoods, like at Newton South High School, to do some of that? Or is that just not possible?
I would have to talk with clerk more on that and get back to you as far as moving the location around, because right now these hours are based on at City Hall.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Malachy.
So I understand the state rules, are we supposed to have hours every day in that range? Something every day that range?
Yes, correct. So for weekdays, it at least has to be our office hours, and in the weekends we have to have at least 6 hours per day, and that's because of Newton size.
Right. Okay. And I'm curious, have any days proven to be busier than others historically?
Off the top of my head, I don't know that data. I'd have to take a deeper dive into the numbers on that.
But we're going to do all anyway, it sounds like. Okay. And I've never been clear on, now that we have early voting and mail-in voting that you can hand in person, and we still have absentee voting, are they functionally different?
So yeah, that's a commonly asked question. So there's early in-person voting, which is kind of what we're talking about now. People come in person and they vote almost like they would at the precinct, just at City Hall
That's
before the
really
election. We have vote by mail, which is new as of the Votes Act that was established, I believe it was before my time in Newton, so I'm not sure, but it was around 2020, 2021.
it's the
That's vote by
pandemic.
mail, and that's those postcards that you get from the state, that's a sign up for vote by mail. There's also still from before vote by mail, there is still absentee voting. It is essentially the same as vote by mail, except we use that more for out of country voters now. However, people could still request absentee to be sent within Newton. But vote by mail is the much more widely used method.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councilor Malachy. Councilor Baker.
Thank you. I'm trying to do this on an iPhone, so bear with me for a minute. So the question I have just is, how are you doing on the managing the time and the availability of staff? Because in the old days, you had to staff up for the actual polling event, but now we've got a series of voting opportunities that do involve staff. And I just was curious how you're managing the hours and dealing with all of that, because there's a good deal of activity that's coming in over a span of time rather than right at the election day.
Yeah, we've done pretty well. So our poll workers or election workers are handled primarily by our elections coordinator, Sherry Murphy, who's relatively new to the city. She's done a great job so far, making sure that we always have early in-person staff, vote by mail staffed, and the actual election day staff. So we do always, we're working on the schedule as we speak. Regardless of what the hours may or may not be, we're making sure we have people there for those days. So we give ourselves plenty of leeway and plenty of lead time to make sure that we have everything staffed. So doing pretty good on that end.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
You all second? Okay. Thank you. Councilor Labovitz. Am I saying it right now, by the way? Am I doing better?
Yeah, you did it in less than 3.
Okay.
I just wondered if there had been any comments or complaints from the public from residents about the hours.
Not to my knowledge, we haven't gotten any complaints about the hours. No.
Mm-hmm. Is anybody else aware of any complaints?
I will say that in my experience, I have not. We have gotten emails in the past when it comes to relocating a polling location. Sometimes that gets either a little bit trickier, or we have to be really careful about the notice that we provide and make sure that both we provide notice, people know where the new polling location is, and on the day of the election that there's sufficient signage to direct someone to the correct polling location from the old polling location. I think we've gotten pretty good at it, but I would say that more of the comments we hear are in sort of that line.
Yeah, I would think since it's been done for several years now, we would have heard if there were any problems with it. So I would be inclined to favor the recommendation.
I don't see any other hands. So if I'm not mistaken, the process, Mr. Doyle, is that the Election Commission usually takes a vote to make a recommendation. The City Council has to finalize those hours. It comes to this committee as a docket item to sort of forward that on to the full City Council. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just to sort
approval.
Of also help members of the committee understand what we're doing. Councilor Humphrey has moved approval. Any discussion on that? Anyone have any questions about what we're doing? Okay. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please. I'm sorry, Councilor Labovitz, your hand is still up, but that's a remnant, right?
Sorry.
Okay,
yeah,
just making sure. Okay, all those in favor of approving these as the early voting hours, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that's 8-0. Great. Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Appreciate it.
You committee members have a good rest of your night.
Have a good night. The next item is item 48-24. This is a resolution on avoiding PFAS in Newton purchasing. For those of you who have not had an opportunity to read it, I believe the resolution starts on page 4. I think this was filed by Councillor Downs. Councillor Malachy, do you want to speak to this as well?
Yes.
I see Councillor Downs here. Okay. Just want to give you an opportunity to, say sort of what led to this, in case anyone has any questions about it, and then we can go on from there.
Well, beyond the extensive discussion we had about PFAS in the course of talking about artificial turf, it's actually, as I think most of you probably know by now, it's widespread in a whole lot of products. From the point of view of Newton's purchases, I guess the things that I would most want to make sure it's not in are, things that contain food in the schools, or, carpeting, or fabrics used in furniture, particularly for schools, or really anywhere, whether it's, library or any other buildings. And there's a lot of resources out there, as you can see on the research that's been done, and the purchasing guides and precedent elsewhere for trying to avoid purchases of products that contain, PFAS. And even the Newton Fire Department is, moving toward, or has already, I guess, started purchasing firefighting foam that does not contain PFAS. I hope whatever it contains instead is not just as bad. Sometimes there's a problem with successor substitute chemicals not being different enough, but as far as we know, they're doing better. So I think that, and I think it's also another benefit of this, I think, will be to raise public awareness, because, for example, I've got one of my MIT classmates, she's a retired chemical engineer. She lives in Bedford. She had not heard of PFAS being a health issue. So I think we can do better at making sure we avoid purchasing it where we can, and making other people aware of the issue.
Thank you, Councillor Malachy. Mr. Yeo, did you want to weigh in on the PFAS resolution?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome all of you new members to this committee. Lots of great topics to cover over the next few years. And so I'm glad of the resolution. I think we're very supportive, and this administration and our departments are taking great efforts to deal with the PFAS issue. As somebody who worked in the water industry and around water supply protection and contamination, this is a huge issue in my heart. First, start with the bad news, and that is the fire department, yes, as Councillor Malachy has said, has replaced and eliminated PFAS in foam that might be used in the course of the fire. Unfortunately, the bunker gear, the gear that the firefighters wear during fires, still has some PFAS. They are taking various measures to limit their exposure to it. They're not using that bunker gear on medical calls, and they're doing various things to limit the effort. So that's sort of the bad news. The good news, Public Buildings, Josh Morse and his team have issued, as part of their sustainability guidelines, requirement for PFAS-free in all materials, whether it's carpeting and building materials, wherever possible. And I think so far that's been pretty successful. That is true as well. Parks and Rec is doing that as well with things that they're ordering, and they're taking up the Public Buildings guidance. Schools, as Councillor Malachy very correctly pointed out, that is really where, especially around food preparation and carpeting and those things, those are important things to be looking at. I've been in touch with schools in the last week. Their purchasing team, they've made sure that it's not in any of the chemical supplies that they're buying. The lunch trays that they use have been certified PFAS free. they are working with their vendor on the rest of their products around lunch preparation to make sure that they are doing everything they can do to make sure that they're PFAS free. So, we're trying to cover all the bases here. This is an important issue for both our employees, but certainly for our residents and our students in our schools. So, I think, we're supportive of this. We're in agreement that we're going to do everything we can do as a city to limit our purchase and our exposure to PFAS. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yeo. And that is what the resolution calls for.
Yeah.
So, okay. Any other discussion?
I just wanted to point out one thing. I noticed in looking at the draft, for some reason the link to this very handy Slick New Guide, very clever name. The link was not working, but I found the link that works. So if you would like the new link, I could send that to you.
Please do. I clicked on that and yeah, it didn't work. Yeah.
It's very easy to find by Googling. You could almost like leave out.
Yeah,
to find it, but I can send. I'll send Ms. Norton the good link, which is actually a much shorter, more compact link.
Perfect. Okay, Councilor Labovitz.
Yeah, I just wondered if there were products that are not at this time replaceable or substitutable, if that's a word, that have PFAS, that contain PFAS.
Councilor Malachy, do you know of products that are not substitutable?
I think, well, I guess one example that comes to mind, I think, is certain medical products, whether it's, I don't know if it's parts of things you do vaccinations with, or tubing or things like that. I think there may be some medical products. I was surprised, actually, I was about to send you all the link to the guide. Some of the PPE, like masks, apparently had PFAS in it, probably because it's, I would guess it might be the lining to the masks to keep them water resistant or something like that, which was a bit disturbing. So I think that's one example I can think of.
Well, I meant more specifically for the city and particularly in the schools.
Well, we were actually buying masks, not that long ago. But I don't know of anything that would not be substitutable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Makeley.
Yeah, just on that note, in situations where that does come up, the resolution allows for us to still purchase those items. So I think that's important, that even if you're concerned about limitations for products that don't have a appropriate substitute, this resolution gives some flexibility on that. That's why
I just wanted to become aware of what they were. That's all. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Malachy, were you interested in making a motion here?
I'd be happy to move it as my first official act in the meeting, in the committee. Thank you.
Councilor Malachy has moved approval of 4824. Any other discussion on that motion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent. I see that the 5 new members do understand that we are unanimous in this committee. I am pleased to see that you've all understood the rules of this committee, and I welcome your participation in the unanimity that we share here. Mr. Yeo, the next item is item 27-24. This is the Newton Public Schools curriculum investments. We are still waiting for Dr. Nolan. Is that correct?
I believe so. I know the mayor's down the hall in a school committee meeting. So I know that the superintendent is in there, and unfortunately, I thought I saw an email that she wasn't available until about 8:30. So that's a ways from 7:50. You guys have moved quickly through this. So
we're good.
I don't know how you want to handle that. I can certainly text the mayor to see how they're doing, but down there. But I'm sure
Sure.
they're
Why
busy.
don't you see if you can get her? We can move on to the reappointment, which is just
Yeah.
one other item that we
Okay.
have, which is very
Mr. Chair, I
quick.
just had a clarifying question here.
Sure.
This committee is only dealing with the curriculum item, right? Because there in the backup, all of the facilities stuff was included too. But that's the other committee that's handling that, right?
Correct.
Okay. Especially for the people who haven't been on the committee before, I wanted to clarify that. I know we had taken up this both items in finance already, not for a vote, but just for initial discussion, but that only affects two of us who heard that presentation already, so.
Yeah. All right, well, why don't we, item 57-24. This is the reappointment of Jane Brown to the Human Rights Commission. Hopefully folks saw in the packet, what we do is when we get appointments, normally we get a copy of the application that the individual filled out, sort of saying, maybe why they're interested in serving in this capacity. Maybe a resume, maybe some background information on the person. Normally, for an initial appointment, the person appears before the committee and we ask questions. We may ask any questions that are appropriate. Any members of the committee or other members of the city council obviously can ask any questions that are appropriate. Historically, for reappointments, as is the case with this one, the individual has not been required to appear before the city council, before the committee. At one point, early in my career here in the city council, I took the position that, or I at least suggested to my colleagues that it might make more sense to not necessarily have people come in for their initial appointment, but actually to come in for the reappointment when they have some experience serving in the capacity. We can actually talk to them about what they've done, how they've found their time on a certain committee or commission. I think Councilor Baker spoke fairly articulately about why the rules have been the way they are. But, I sort of continue to believe that for the initial appointments, I don't know, it feels like there might be more there to discuss on a reappointment, but that's for the committee to decide, or at least for the city council to decide. And, perhaps Councilor Humphrey, if we do another rules discussion, that's a topic that we could bring up in that capacity. It looks like, I don't know if you guys are still hearing me.
I don't recall whether that was that a rule thing or a tradition thing?
The rules talk about bringing the person before the committee and before the city council. I think the rules actually talk about an appointment or a reappointment, having the opportunity to interview the person. I think the tradition has been that the reappointment, they're not required to appear. I don't know that the rules specifically say that they're not required to appear. Councilor Baker, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. My memory is yours, that the rules don't specifically say that. I will say that in a prior incarnation of the committee, when the practice was otherwise, we had really a very difficult time getting almost anything else done, because this particular committee, as members will see fairly soon, has over lots of commissions. And the problem we were running into is that we had almost serial appointment conversations, and we were routinely approving these. I mean, we were not ignoring the opportunity to talk with people, but it became apparent that was not a wise use of the committee's time. So the practice evolved, and I think it's adopted in other committees, is that for reappointments, unless there's something that raises a problem, we do those. If the mayor reappoints them, then we will support that. That's just any member of the committee and any member of the council obviously can always ask for more conversation with anyone or about anyone. But I think that members who are new to the committee will, I think, soon find out how much time we can actually spend on items that are not directly related to appointments. So it's a wise idea to conserve that resource. So.
That's excellent. Thank you, Councilor Baker. Exactly what I was looking for. Appreciate that. Councilor Oliver? Councilor Oliver?
Seems
Am I going out again? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, but was that you
I
or
think
was
that was him
'cause
that time.
everything froze for me too?
I saw you
apologize,
physically freeze on the screen there,
You
Counselor
froze,
Oliver,
John.
so.
You froze.
I froze.
No, John froze.
Counselor Oliver, it's your fault, but
It's me.
it's to you now.
Okay, it's a me thing. Okay, got it. Interesting. All right. I think a lot of what I was the rationale or why I was raising my hand, Counselor Baker just covered. But it does seem to me that somewhere in the process, and this has always kind of been a question of mine, like we see these appointments come through, and it's almost like 98.9% of the time it's a rubber stamp process. And I'm not saying it shouldn't necessarily be that, but just being able to put a face with the name and have a brief conversation about the residents who are volunteering, in some cases a considerable chunk of their time, would be nice. Although I respect Councilor Baker's perspective on the yes until it gets to be 80% of our time together. So it might actually be worth something, worth bringing up during the rules discussion or elsewhere. I'm not quite sure if that actually expresses what I had in mind, but it would be nice to put a face to a name. And I suppose any one of us, myself included, can do that outside of any committee. Perhaps there's I don't know, does it make sense then to put more lead time in front of items where there are reappointments so that we have the opportunity to reach out to said commission or board member and just say hi? I don't know. Perhaps it's a conversation for another night. I haven't thought about it until just now, but I guess
it sounds like what we should do is make sure that this is a topic that comes up when we either reestablish the rules subcommittee or take up an item on the rules, one way or the other.
I would agree with that. I'd be happy with that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Oliver. Councilor Baker, your hand is up again. Is that a remnant?
It is a remnant. My apologies. But
Okay, no worries.
Just to pick up on Councilor Oliver's point, if we get enough advance notice, there might be a way that councilors could be advised a meeting in advance that appointments were coming forward if someone had a question in advance. That might be an administrative way to deal with it outside of the rules.
Sorry, Councilor Humphrey.
Thank you. I had also been thinking along kind of similar lines for some time that I think in most cases the reappointments are pretty much routine and there isn't really a question. I think less on an individual basis, more on a specific commission or appointment basis. There are certain ones that might warrant some additional scrutiny regardless of who the people are, and that the way to handle that might be to give people a heads up in advance, like, hey, this one's going to be coming up for reappointment. Does anybody have something they want to flag about that? I know some folks had expressed concerns or at least voted no without expressing concerns on some reappointments of some election commission people, and I understood where they were coming from, although we hadn't, done a deep dive on it or anything. So there's a few of them that I think might be particularly important positions that might warrant some additional level of scrutiny on reappointments, but I understand it's hard to come up with a consistent way of handling that.
I can't remember if this came up last time, but I have it in my head that one of the reasons that we thought it made sense to leave the rules worded as they were was sort of the instance that you're talking about, Councilor Humphrey, that it still enabled us to ask or request that someone come in, for a reappointment so that we could talk to them just for sort of that instance, whether it's the one-off or the rare instance, I would say, where we knew that some councilors had some questions. And my feeling is that's why we left the rules worded the way they did and sort of the tradition in place, but I may be making that up. But it would certainly seem to fit within the auspices of the way the rules are currently drafted. Councilor Malachy.
I was just thinking, what was Councilor Lobovitz before me, or okay? I was just thinking, one way to handle it might be if we wanted to have a discussion on a particular appointment, or if there were a lot of appointments in one night, just to have like a 6:30 start instead of 7, the way Zap, when they were really busy, would do 6:30 starts instead of 7.
Yep, that's certainly an option. And by the way, it's Councilor Lobovitz, please try to
Did I
pronounce
do
it
it
correctly.
wrong?
My goodness.
I want to call Alan.
Poking fun of myself because I get names wrong, and I think it's important to get names right, and I'm mad at myself every time I do it. So, Councilor Lobovitz.
Yeah, I also thought we should consider having an earlier start, not as formal part of the meeting necessarily, but an opportunity for those who want to speak to the appointee. But I also had a question about the purpose of that, especially on a reappointment. Is the purpose really to re-examine the qualifications of the member of the nominee, or I guess it's a nominee, or is it really to find out more about what's going on in that particular committee or commission, and what their views are on the issues at hand? So it's just a point of clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilor Baker, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, yes. Let me see if can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I have internet connections too. I think that's better done if there's an interest in it by having a docket item to talk with members of a specific commission about their operations. The problem is that it sometimes puts a particular appointee in a position of trying to speak for the group, which I think sometimes is difficult. And we're really trying to just see if that person is worthy of being reappointed. And again, the experience we've had has been that the very, very rare, almost, it's hard for me to remember specific cases where we've rejected an appointment, because the mayor's office does a pretty thorough job of vetting people to start with. So if there are questions about how a commission is operating or what it's doing, it's, I think, an opportunity to talk about that directly, maybe with the chair of the commission, and invite the other members in and have a conversation. But I wouldn't urge us to start a practice of trying to carry that burden, put that burden on the shoulders of any specific appointee who happens to be before us for reappointment.
That makes sense. Thank you, Councilor Baker. Councilor Lobovitz?
Yeah, so if that is the main purpose, then I would favor not, at least on a routine basis, bringing people in who for reappointment to speak to them. And as Councilor Baker said, if we have concerns about the activity or questions about the activity of a certain committee or commission, we could ask the chair. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. The last thing I'll mention is that there is a storied tradition of allowing the counselor on the committee who is from the ward of the nominee to move approval at that stage. So that is something we usually try to do and allow that sort of honor to the counselor president. So in this case, for example, that would be you, Councilor Mickley. So if you were inclined to move approval of 5724, the reappointment of Jane Brown to the Human Rights Commission, now would be an opportune time for you to do that.
I'd like to move the approval.
Excellent. Councilor Mickley has moved approval.
Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? All right. All those in favor of approval of 5724, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? 8-0. Good job. Councilor Lobovitz, your hand is up. Is that a remnant or are you? Okay. Last item of the night, item 27-24. This is an item to appropriate $925,000 Newton Public Schools curriculum investments. I believe that we are joined by Dr. Anna Nolan, who is going to tell us why and how this money will be allocated. I know Dr. Nolan has had many busy nights lately. Did anyone watch Dr. Nolan on new TV last night after our meeting? Yeah, that was pretty good. Pretty good. I thought Dr. Nolan and Chair Bresky did an excellent job. Dr. Nolan, welcome to Programs and Services.
Hello, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you just fine.
Okay, sorry, I'm not in a place where the internet is allowing me to turn my camera to live.
Is that North Korea?
No, for some reason it's North High School.
Okay.
Similar. I'm here for the profile of a graduate session. We've just finished. So if you can stand just looking at my picture for a moment. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this item. I did submit to your assistant a memo for your viewing pleasure. I hope you had it before you. But in essence, my entry plan audit for the curriculum materials for the Newton schools does indicate some needs, particularly within our science, technology, engineering, and mathematics areas for curriculum resources, professional development, and other teacher training opportunities. In addition to the types of materials that would allow us to do more personalized instruction and support of students with either more advanced needs or students who are struggling. And I've detailed it within the memo, the different aspects that we hope to achieve with these monies. And I'm happy to answer any questions or give you any further detail you might desire.
Thank you. If folks are looking for it, I believe it starts on page 14 of your agenda. Hopefully folks had an opportunity to see that and look through that. Appreciate the materials, Dr. Nolan. It's always helpful to us when we can look at those materials in advance. It certainly helps keep our time to a minimum here as well, if folks are able to do their homework as we were. So let me see, any committee members have any questions? Okay.
Two of us already heard the full presentation in finance, so.
Yep. Any, Councilor Oliver?
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Dr. Nolan. I reviewed the finance meeting recording and just wanted to confirm that really what we're talking about here are, if I remember how it was characterized, this is the kind of the beginning, if you will, of or part of the recommendations in your entry plan, Dr. Nolan, in terms of kind of getting the schools where we need them to be, where we want them to be, correct?
That's correct.
Great. That was really all I really wanted to cover, was just that this is the start of that process, not the completion of it. But thank you very much. That's all I really needed here. I'm happy to move the item.
Councilor Oliver has moved approval. Yep, Councilor Oliver has moved approval. Discussion on that motion, Councilor Labovitz?
Yeah, it's just, again, a point of information. If we approve this, what's the connection with the finance committee and the budget? What are actually we approving? The money to
what are we doing?
This plan?
Is your question, what are we actually doing here? So items that are within our purview, or expenditures within departments that are within the purview of the Programs and Services Committee, go to both committees within the City Council. So usually sort of the Committee of Jurisdiction, which in this case is Programs and Services, sometimes it might be, a staff item, or a PF item, or, another committee. But in this case, schools, it will come to us. So we are handling the item. It will then also go to finance. If finance approves it as well, it will then go to the full City Council. Once finance takes it up, it will go to the full City Council. If there are conflicting reports, that's something that the full City Council will have to reconcile. But once the two committees take it up and move it out, then the full City Council gets to vote on it. Jacqueline, have I said that okay? Have I characterized that appropriately? I don't want to make a mistake here.
That is correct.
Okay. I'd hate to make a mistake here in front of Dr. Nolan. Would that be embarrassing? Okay.
I'm very forgiving.
Thankfully, so is my wife. Councilor Lovitz, you okay? Okay. Councilor Oliver has moved approval. Any other discussion? Seeing no other discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? 8-0. Dr. Nolan, thank you. Thank you for your time. You are all set here. Enjoy the rest of Newton North.
Thank you. I wanted to just invite you all to some upcoming visits to schools that we'll be sponsoring, and more information will be coming shortly so that you can actually see the investments you approve in action. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Nolan. We'll look forward to that. Committee members, I believe we have come to the end of our inaugural agenda. That's the right word, our first agenda. And if there's no other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Councilor Malachy has moved adjournment. No discussion. All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Also,
Have a good night.
if anybody who's new on the committee needs more briefings and stuff on like the workings of the committee and the mandate and stuff, I'm available. I can't speak for our chair. He's got probably a different, busier schedule, less flexible schedule than I have, but I know a couple people had asked, and so I can do one-on-ones with you, and that way we don't have to have concerns about a quorum being present for a discussion like that or anything.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Good to see you. Welcome to the best committee on the city council.
The most
Night.
exciting. Good night.
Have a good night, everyone.
Recording stopped.
So, Jacqueline.
Here, just give me 1 second.